This is a Renew Studios Network podcast. Faithful, uplifting, family-focused.
This is the way it feels to move through summer in Lululemon. Iconic Align softness without the front seam. For our smoothest look and feel ever, summer won't know what hit it. Stretch your limits in the non-stop flexibility of the new Lululemon Align No Line Pant in select stores and at Lululemon.com.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. Knowing you could be saving money for the things you really want, like that dream house or ride, is a great feeling. That's why the State Farm Personal Price Plan can help you save when you choose to bundle home and auto. Bundling, just another way to save with the Personal Price Plan. Prices are based on rating plans that vary by state. Coverage options are selected by the customer. Availability, amount of discounts and savings, and eligibility vary by state.
This is a Rogue Media Network podcast. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Relationships and Reason. We are super excited, as always, to connect with you, tell you what has been going on in our minds and some of the conversations that we've been having together and, you know, some of the reflections that we've been having too. So strap in and let's talk. Sophia, what do you got for us today?
Yeah, today's episode, I think it hits home for all of us, if I want to be honest with it. It's about conflict and how every one of us have to deal with it, whether we deal with it with our spouse or friends or family member or even sometimes with ourselves. We have to face it, every emotions that arise with it, the tension that builds up. So the real question becomes, what do you do in that moment when you do have to face conflicts? Do we go silent? Do we say what's really in our hearts? Do we stop and pray first? Or do we just kind of react based on the emotion? You know? The truth is, when you think about it, conflict is something that we all have to deal with, and it doesn't have to be destructive.
Right.
In fact, it is one of the greatest tools when it comes to intimacy and growth.
Yeah,
right?
we've talked about that.
Yeah, and healing. And if we use it in a way that is effective, it can be one of those resources at the right time that can definitely help you to propel into your future. So whenever we talk today, we're just going to talk about conflict resolution. What do you do? Do you go silent? Do you pray? Or do you, are you one of those people that has to like communicate and say what's on your heart? So using the right resource in conflict, that's our topic today. Are you a person that goes silent? Do you have to pray? Or do you want to get everything off your chest right away? So today's episode is about emotional maturity. How do you handle situations as you grow in life, as you grow in relationships with your spouse, with your family member, with your friends? So it's going to stretch us today. So strap in and get ready to listen.
Yeah, so we're talking about everybody. We're not just talking about spouses. We're talking about conflict with everybody.
Everyone.
Because you get that every single day. I love how you opened it up and talked about, something that is also an opportunity, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Traditionally, we don't look at it that way.
Yes.
Right? We look at conflict as, man, it's just something else I got to deal with on top of all the things that I got going on. But if we look at conflict as an opportunity, whether that's to grow, whether that's to build relationships, whether that's to get just better overall, it can shift our perspective whenever it comes about.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when you immediately hear of the word conflict, you just automatically think like, oh my gosh, here we go again. You just almost put up like a wall.
Yeah.
You know, that's like, oh, I have to deal with this and I don't want to, just because I know it's going to be really super awkward and I don't want to deal with this situation. Let's just, just throw a rug over it and cover it up and let's just forget about it. Forget it didn't happen. But in fact, conflict is necessary for growth,
Absolutely.
and I think most of us just kind of like put like a wall up any time you hear of the word conflict,
Yeah.
and trying to figure out how to deal with the situation. But conflict, if you use it in the right way, can be the most effective thing.
It's so good. And I'm remembering what one of my mentors told me a number of years ago. And he was talking specifically, he said, "Hey, do you know what the word, um, what am I trying to think of? But basically, whenever we have an altercation, right? And there's an origin, and I'm going blank right now, but essentially what we're doing is confrontation, right? Do you remember? I might have shared this with you, but my mentor, Randy, shout out to him, San Antonio, he shared with me that the way that we look at confrontation has been wrong. It simply means essentially to turn and to look at the situation, whatever it is that's facing us. Look at what's going on and take a look at that. You don't have to necessarily gripe about it. You don't have to have a conflict with the situation, but you have to turn and acknowledge it. I reference this a lot, especially when talking to former athletes and students about, transitioning into a next career, because that for them is there's a conflict point there typically. But when you start to look at it, you get uncomfortable and you start to think about, all the different challenges. But first, what it takes is just to look at the situation and figure out what are you going to do with it. So I love that reframing that he gave me, because when I started to just turn around and look at the situation, what is it? And what do I need to do from this point? You begin to sort of go through the processes or the stages of like knowing what to do, because you're simply turn around to identify it and to acknowledge it.
Yeah, I love that you said that. And I think that whenever it comes to like conflict, you say you like turn it and facing it. Whenever it comes to like relationships, with our spouse or with friends, and I mean, you drew the reference to, athletes and going on to a different space and a different phase of life, and there's so many different conflicts that you can face. But when it comes to like relationship and the aspect of a situation where there is words that was said, and how, so the question becomes now, why is it so important to know which conflict or which resource to use in the moment of conflict? Do you usually stay silent? Are you a person that's like, okay, I got to pray about this, or are you someone that has to be able to communicate? Like, I have to get this off of my chest right away. So, which conflict resolution do you go towards? You just give the silent treatment? Do you pray? Or are you somebody that, no, you got to sit here and you got to listen to everything that I got to say? So that's kind of what we're talking about today when it comes to relationship and facing or dealing with a conflict. Which of these three main resource do you go towards the most? What would you say?
Well, I think naturally we have our own ways that we automatically go to, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's the right way to do it
Correct.
during that time, right? So I know for sure that I'm a person that even though y'all hear me on this podcast, I'm not a person that actually loves to talk, right? I have a few amount of words that I kind of use each day, and in fact, whenever we do podcasts, that's pretty much it. So nobody else don't get nothing from me.
We go home at night and he's silent the rest of the night.
But I so naturally for me, I can definitely be on the reserve.
He's the silent type.
Yeah.
That's basically what he's trying to say.
I can be on the reserve, right? I can keep to myself. I'm fine with just like chilling in a corner and not saying anything. That would be okay with me. But over the years, I've come to really love the opportunity to engage in a loving way that also builds relationship. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that. But what's your style?
I guess if we consider these three things, I would say, okay, I probably go to prayer first. But as I was thinking through that, this question popped up into my mind. It's like, do you truly go to prayer first, or do we use prayer as a way to avoid a situation? You know, sometimes you should talk about the conflict, or you should talk about what's going on, but we tend to like reserve back to prayer and
God's
be like,
like, what
God's
you
gonna
what you
handle
talking to me
this.
for? He's right there. Like, look at him, and just say
And
what
I'm
you
like,
need to say.
no, Lord.
No, Lord,
You-
I come to you.
I'm coming to you,
today.
Lord. Please, Lord. Please, Lord, help your son. He needs a hearing. He needs a spanking from you. He doesn't need me. So then that becomes the question, right? You know, do we use prayer as a way to just avoid the situation when you really should be talking? So so that's what I tend to go towards. But I know there's been situations where I needed to talk to you, but I'm like, no, Lord, I'm gonna come to you first.
Yeah.
Or in a way when God's like, just go do what I asked you to do.
Yeah.
Already.
What do you feel like has been before you? Well, actually, maybe what do you feel like is the optimal, or in what situations do you need to kind of use the different styles? And we're just talking about a few right now, because I'm sure there's plenty of ways in dealing with conflicts and in different situations. So out of the three that we're kind of talking about right now, how have you determined which is the right one to use at what time?
That's a that's a pretty tricky question.
Okay.
Well, it's a pretty tricky scenario, and as I was thinking about this, you know, sometimes it's good to be silent, and then sometimes it's good to pray, and sometimes it's good to talk. So it's literally about facing when you're in the middle of a conflict, and we'll just use you and I in this situation. You know, we are mad at each other, and I know within my heart I need to say something. You know, I know within my heart I need to say something, but I'm just like, I don't want to, whether that's because of pride or whether that's because of like, I don't want to necessarily say fear, because I don't think that I'm afraid of you, but it could be like a reservation as to like, oh my gosh, I don't know how this is going to come off. Or do I need to, okay, Holy Spirit, give me wisdom here to be able to say what I need to say in the right way. Do I need to wait a moment before I say this? And I'm not the necessarily like the silent type.
No, no, you're not. Sorry, go ahead. Keep going.
Oh, yes, we're very opposite. We're very opposite there. I'm not the silent type. I in fact, I can't stand the silent treatment. But I have learned that it's important to stay silent at times. You know, so I think that there's benefit to all three of them. When we talk about silence, whether it's prayer or whether we use communication. So I think what I go back to as my first instinct is to pray, but I don't always use what the Holy Spirit tells me. I just say whatever is on my mind sometimes. And I just blurt out, you know, this is what I'm feeling, and this is what you're not doing, and this is what this is, you know, and you this and you that, you know. Yeah,
which is dangerous. Right, which is troublesome. But again, that's why I believe overall, like arguments, it's good for marriage, right? When it's dealt with properly.
Yes.
When it's done properly. We've talked about it in the past that so these conflicts, one, they are an invitation for you to get to know your partner better, for you to get to know an individual better. Whenever you disagree on something, that is essentially saying something is important to one of these individuals, and there needs to be a mutual understanding of why this is important, right? I love to go into a lot of my partnership conversations, and I say, hey, if we are, and I learned this from another mentor, is that if we are working on something big or something difficult and we are not disagreeing with each other, then something is wrong. Something is completely wrong. And so we need to be able to disagree with each other and have those types of conversation. Now, how do we have those conversations? That's where the key, that's where the goal is, right? Because whenever you can actually ask better questions, you can inquire, you can actually be curious, and you can show empathy in what people are expressing, then you're moving on to this whole different level because you're unpacking just different emotions, you're unpacking stories, you're unpacking, wants and desires, you're unpacking all kinds of different things that you typically would not hear if you're not having that conflict.
Yeah, and I love that, and just like we talked about, in our last podcast about whether your partner is a project or is he or she a resource, and you talk about getting into these conflicts and disagreeing, and we talked about the person coming into a relationship with past experiences, and so there has to be some disagreements, and I think why conflicts is usually something that brings up avoidance is, oh, I don't want to deal with your emotions right now.
Yeah.
Or here you go, we're going to talk about this. I just want to hear what you have to say right now.
Yeah.
Because the disagreement can feel so uncomfortable that people don't necessarily want to sit in it to get to the next level. But it is sitting in it that causes you to reach over to the next level. Like you mentioned, having empathy for the person because we sat there and listened to what their side of the argument is, and remember we are dealing with when it comes to like family members, friendships, whatever it is, you're dealing with two different people coming from two different lifestyles, having different perspectives, having a different mind, having a different mindset of how they view a situation.
Yeah.
So being able to just kind of sit and hear from their perspective how they saw the situation, then you can say, oh, you know what? I didn't see it that way.
Yeah.
But thank you for sharing that with me. And you're able to either forgive the person and move on. And then you realize that as you forgive them, that the relationships start getting better because you saw them in a different way, or, you did something to hurt the person and you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize that, like I said that, or I'm sorry, I didn't mean it that way. But because you were able to express the emotion to give, to give yourself to the person, to share your emotions with them, and the other person then can empathize with you to grow. But I think that disagreement, like you mentioned, is what obviously caused the conflict, but it enables a relationship to grow even further.
Yeah, and I mean, we won't dive into this too much, but it's, again, we talked about how we do that. And when we shout, right, at each other, or you're in this place where, again, whoever it is, whether it's an employee, coworker, partner, whenever we begin to start shouting, now we're bringing in something else into the disagreement. Right now, you're bringing in emotions that perhaps triggers or reminds an individual of something else in their life, or brings about something that now they are wanting to get defensive. Right.
Yeah.
And so it's mutual. It's that type of thing. And so when people are shouting at each other or using maybe hurtful words, that's another thing. Right. Because you can have a disagreement with a person, but you can decide what kind of words you're gonna use in order to communicate when you communicate with them. And you can use these words that are gonna trigger these individuals or somebody. So now you don't want them to even respond back to your disagreement. You just want to hurt them. Right. And so there are a number of different tactics that I think we use consciously and subconsciously to try and manipulate and get our way. But in the end, it doesn't work, and it doesn't make us better.
No, absolutely. It just shuts the relationships down. And if we go back to talking about what we are saying here with silence, prayer, and communication, when we do shout, you automatically put a wall up. So then silence is just literally automatic. You either gonna keep on shouting at each other, or one person's gonna be silent, and you're just like, well, I ain't got nothing else to say. And it's like prayer. I'm definitely not talking to God about this because there's nothing to resolve here. And then the communication style is like, well, one person is shouting, which means like one is overpowering the other. But I did hear this one time that someone said that whenever we are shouting at each other in a relationship, it means that our hearts are so far away, so far apart from each other, that we feel like we have to shout in order for the other person's heart to hear us. So I just thought that was really interesting, and and are pretty cool, and I've never forgotten it because when I kind of, you think about it, you're like, oh yeah, because like if you're in a relationship with someone and there's conflict, you can have a emotionally healthy conversation without shouting,
Yeah.
right? But I think that sometimes, whether it's past your upbringing or whatever that causes you to shout, because this is what happened in my family, so there's something that happened, I need to get my word out, and I need to shout and I need to raise my voice in order for you to hear me.
Yeah.
But if the person, whether it's a friend or in your relationship or your boss or whomever, and if they're not used to that type of, talking to, then it's probably automatic silence.
Absolutely.
To
Yeah.
where they're like, well, we don't have anything to talk,
Yeah, or
talk
some
about.
type of retaliation.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's a really good point, because it takes, I've heard this as well, it takes two to tango, right? So one person can be shouting and feeling like they're getting their way because they're the loudest, but it takes, I think there's this power too. We were talking about these different kinds of reactions and ways that we interact with the conflict, but silence, I think, is one of those powerful things, and where at times it is important to not react, right, to that type of thing. So I think that's where, if we're talking about like where can we apply some of these things, it's like if somebody is directly trying to get into an argument with you, right, you don't have to respond.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to get into a shouting match with that person. You don't have to necessarily like get into a place where you're deflecting everything. And that's, we're touching on stuff that goes much deeper, right?
Right.
Talking about your confidence levels and where you feel comfortable and what you're capable or your capacity is. But that's, I think, one of those areas where silence really comes into place, because somebody can be shouting all they want, but if you can be strong in your silence and not be baited into being tested or react in a certain way, sometimes it will work where that person will have to calm down in order to get to that conversation with you.
Yeah, that's really good. And then the question now becomes, when it comes to silence, what's the difference between silence for peace and silence for punishment?
Yeah.
So like you just mentioned, there are times when, if somebody is shouting and they're raising their voice, so high, and it's just almost, it's embarrassing, it's demeaning, and you have to then consider or really question, okay, well, if I raise my voice just as high as you, like, it,
Yeah.
what are we trying to prove here?
Yeah. What will be the result?
What will be the result? So then, like you mentioned, that silence can be where, what, let me just gather my peace, like, let me get into my own peaceful state, so I don't really, try to overreact or say something because you are yelling, or I don't have to respond simply because you are upset. And that silence can actually cause peace, because you didn't say what was on your mind.
Yeah.
But obviously we know that people can use silent treatment for punishment. It's
Right.
like, I don't want to even look at you or see you or whatever, and you just use a silent treatment, as in turn your back. I don't want to hear anything that you have to say, and that can be dangerous.
Right. Yeah. Well. And then we talk about that other piece that you mentioned here. So we were talking about silence, communication, and
prayer.
And prayer. But all of this overall is communication. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah?
Absolutely.
If you're choosing silence, that is communicating, right? If you are choosing to say just a few words, you still bring in something.
Well, your words out of your emotional state.
Yeah.
Where you just kind of blurt out.
Yeah.
And don't think too much about what you're actually saying. Like, you just want to be hurtful.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so the communication aspect, again, we've touched into this or we've talked about this in different areas, but the way that you respond to things, I feel like there's such a huge opportunity to to bring people in, to get people closer. And one of the ways I think we can do that, just like I think it's a strategy or it's a tactic and approach, it's good questioning, right? Good questions, I believe, builds relationships, right? When there's a disagreement and you are able to, first of all, listen.
Right. It starts there.
Yeah, it starts there. You're hearing what they're saying and acknowledging that. But then you can ask questions based on what you are hearing, recalling what they're saying and being able to bring that back to them, even in their words at times. That helps to bring empathy. It truly transforms communication between people.
Yeah, and I love how you just mentioned, it starts with listening. And this is something that we've learned in our relationship as we've grown over the years, is like sitting in the conflict and being able to sit down and hear the side of the other person.
Yeah.
I don't think very many people are able to do that, to sit down in a conflict, and especially whether it's a friend or mom daughter, mom son, relationship, or boss, boss and employee relationship. It's kind of hard to like sit in the moment to even hear what the person has to say, especially if you feel like you are more important than the other person, or you feel more valuable, or you feel like you were right, or the other person was wrong.
You feel justified in some type of way.
Correct. So I think the reason why conflict the reason why conflict is good, and the ways that it can be effective, is if you are able to come in and sit there and listen.
Yeah.
Starting there.
Yeah, it starts there.
Yeah. So I think whenever you're able to do that, that in itself shows growth.
Yeah. So real quick, how do you know somebody's listening to you, and in a way that makes you like want to like be vulnerable? Because I can just stare at you and just hear what you're saying and be stubborn, like for real, right? You can get to a place where you're like, all right, yeah, I'm gonna listen to you, but in your mind you are just waiting to respond. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like you can be there.
You just have your other question in mind.
Yeah. I'm just waiting for you to stop talking. I'm listening. So I'll acknowledge that you can say I'm listening to you. But as soon as you're done talking, I'm gonna tell you, what about this?
Yes. Yeah. I think that's like the natural reaction for most people. Because I think that solving problems or being in conflict is a learned behavior.
Yeah.
I don't think this is a natural.
Yeah.
Like you don't just naturally come upon this.
True.
Like you have to have the right tools and the right tactics in order to get to this resolve of growth.
Right. Yeah, no, that's good.
Yeah.
All right, next question.
Are you saying that because you just be staring at me sometimes? And I'm like, are you listening? Like respond, like say something, That's the difference in our upbringing also.
Yes, for sure. I mean, we've all, and it depends, I guess, the environments that you grow up in and what you kind of see, but we all got to have the chance to like step outside of that and to see what's possible. And I think we first have to have sort of that growth mindset and wanting to become better. And I think a lot of that also stems from humility, right? Knowing that you don't have all the answers.
Yeah, and just to go back to what you were just saying about knowing that the person is listening, I think you obviously, whenever you're super upset and you first come into the conversation and you're sitting there and you're like, oh, let me hear what they got to say, and and you kind of have walls up, coming into the conflict at first, because you're just like, okay, this is going to be awkward. It's going to be, there's going to be tension, and being able to, first of all, like I said, this is a learned behavior. Mm-hmm. It's not something that just automatically happen. As you grow and relationships, all of it, there's growth in it, and there's maturity as you grow up, to where you're learning, where you have to learn, like, okay, you know, giving the person room to share what's on their heart.
Yeah.
You know, and listening to truly what they have to say. Because I know sometimes I've been upset with you, and then, you know, when you start talking, the tension is there because I can just see things from my perspective.
Yeah.
And as you are talking and expressing yourself and you know, telling me what, you know, how you felt or what was going through your mind in this situation, and if I am listening in a way to hear you, I can see, oh man, I didn't even know that he, like, this affected him like that. You know, or oh man, that really hurt him. I didn't realize that I did that.
Yeah.
And so then, like, little by little, my anger, like, subsides. Not that I didn't get to express what I have to say, but my anger, like, and the tension that I had subsides a little bit, because now I'm like, oh my goodness, I didn't realize that this occurred because of what I said or what I did. And I think whenever you kind of get to the point where you understand and learn that, and whenever you're sitting in a conflict, again, we're talking about family, friendships, your relationship, your marriage relationship, being able to sit in the conflict and hear what the person has to say, not eliminating what you felt or what you have to say.
That's a good point.
But being able to just kind of see, okay, what is their perspective?
Yeah.
You know? And I think obviously with conflict is this person talk, and you now giving the other person room to say what they have to say without interjecting your own opinion. I know I do that with my kids now, to where, you know, whenever they are having an argument with each other, I'm like, all right, let me hear your side. You know, and I'll inevitably one of them always want to chime in, and I'm like, no, not your turn yet, you're gonna sit and wait, and then, you know, and then I'm like, okay, let me hear your other side, let me hear your side now, and then the other ones want to chime into, and I'm like, no, you already got your chance to say everything you got to say, you know. So just making sure that they understand, like, how to quote unquote argue, how to come up with a to be able to express their own self and their own emotion, to say all that's on their mind, and having the other person listen, you know, with that come back. So
that's good.
Yeah, I think those are learned behaviors.
Absolutely. What about prayer? Again, it's one of those kind of broad things where with communication, all of it is kind of the same thing, and I feel like prayer covers it all. We should always be praying, ideally, in some of those conflicts, and in those conflicts. So, like, when do you specifically like engage in prayer? How do you know that? How do you ever feel like do you ever, I'll place it this way, do you ever feel like sometimes, like, this is, like, I'm not gonna bother you with bother God with this, you know what I mean? Like, God, I know this feels like, you know, this is peanuts. I ain't gonna lift this up to you, because this is nothing. Let me just deal with this here. Do you ever feel that way?
No. I'm like, Lord, look.
You just got the guy with everything. God be like, okay, here you go.
You guys like, here she go again.
Okay.
Thank God that he already knows what's going on. But I'm like, Lord, look, this is the situation. I already know you know this, but this is how I'm feeling. And I go with and I express my own emotions. And I'm like, you know, and I feel like sometimes the Holy Spirit just says, okay, do this. And I'm like, no, but God, listen though, you know. You know, and so, and I will go, like, you know, however long, a couple of days, a week, and the Holy Spirit's like, I already told you the solution. I already told you what to do. And then so those funny moments, I'm like, you know, I could have solved this a week ago if I had just listened. But, you know, for me, I try to go to prayer for wisdom. But one of the things I'm learning too is, like, prayer can help you, like, let go of the control of the situation, which is what.
Okay. Now we're talking about, this is deep stuff here.
Is it?
So hold on. So
is it?
So you're talking, no, this is cool because it's multifaceted, right?
What, prayer?
Of course. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Prayer is, and I'm saying it out loud, you know, for myself. Okay. So you're talking about it's unlocking different things, right?
Yeah.
It's not just about you or the situation.
Right.
But it can be about you unlocking the situation. But you also mentioned it can give you wisdom to navigate the situation,
Yes.
which reminds me here of Nehemiah.
Okay.
So you remember in Nehemiah when he had received the information, the news about what was going on in his hometown, and the gates were broken down, busted, and things were being pillaged, and so he was sad, right? And he was the armor bearer to the king, right? And so in a very powerful position, needed, like every day, he needs to be right there for the king. And he has to go and tell the king this. One, he can't just be like, when he comes around, he has to like show his best self
Right.
to the king.
Right.
So like that in itself, right? He has this conflict in his heart. And now he's going to the king. He has to show up to work, right? And be his authentic self, right? And so now he goes there, and now the king is asking him, hey, what's going on with your face, bro? Like, why you come in my presence like this?
Right.
And so the conflict there first for Nehemiah is deciding whether or not he's going to be real and tell the king what's truly going on, right? Which I think that's kind of a part of what you've touched on there, like, just one, how to navigate the situation with wisdom.
Yeah.
The other thing is, what was cool is that with Nehemiah, he starts he decides that he's going to share this with the king. But before he does that, I got the verse pulled up here. It says, so from Nehemiah, let's go from 2 to 5, or 2 to 4. And he says,
what chapter?
Nehemiah chapter 2, 2 to 4. Cool?
Yeah.
It says, therefore the king said to me, why is your face sad since you are not sick? This is nothing but sorrow of heart. So I became dreadfully afraid. That's what he said, Nehemiah. And he says, and said to the king, may the king live live forever. Why should my face not be sad when the city, the place of my father's tomb, lies waste and the gates are burned with fire? Then the king said to me, what do you request? So this has always been the part for me right here. It says, so the king said to me, what do you request? So I prayed to God of heaven. Did you catch that? And I said to the king, if it pleases the king and your servant has found favor in your sight, I ask that you send me to Judah, the city of my father's tomb, so that I may rebuild it. But that little part right there, did you catch it?
Yeah.
What am I talking about?
You prayed to the God of heaven.
He prayed to God right before he responds. Like in the middle of the conflict. You know what I mean?
Yes.
In the middle of the situation,
that's really
he goes to pray. So it's like always. Like we always have to be in communication with God about like, what is the wisdom? What do you want me to do? Like, oh, I'm afraid. I'm about to like, just be with me while I walk through this.
Oh, that's good. That's good. And that's the Holy Spirit. Nehemiah didn't even have the Holy Spirit with him there, but we now have the presence of God with us to where we can pray in any situation at any time, in any moment, you know? But one thing that I love about that is that Nehemiah said what was on his mind, before he went to the king, and he's like, how can I not be sad? Because, we're talking about conflict here. And in order to resolve the conflict, you have to say, you have to speak, in order for this thing to get from one stage to the next. So being able to go to the king and say, yes, I am sad. Or no, I'm not trying to hide it. It's like, hey, what's wrong with you? Oh, no, I'm fine. Nothing's wrong. I was like, what's wrong? Nothing. What's wrong? Nothing. What's wrong? I can see something's wrong. You can't say nothing's wrong. So being able to say that. And I love that what you just pointed out is like praying in the moment. It's like in the middle of the conflict, and it's like the person is raising their voice, or a situation is happening, and you just like, Holy Spirit. And the beauty of God and his Spirit within us is that we can pray silently.
Man, can you imagine for a second, like if you had to pray everything out loud
and sit down and and kneel down and stuff in the middle of the conflict, and just like, you know what, I'm just gonna pray.
Hold up, bro, I'm talking to you, man.
Thank God for Jesus.
That reminds me back in college, every time I used to mess with my teammates when we start eating, we start eating our food and we're having a conversation, and just right in the middle of that conversation, we just start praying. I'm like, hold up, dude. I was talking to you, man.
Like, wait, no, we gotta pray. We gotta pray for the food. You're talking too much.
No.
But the Holy Spirit being with us and
Mhm.
to be able to handle conflict, whether again with our families, with our work, or with our relationship, being able to pray right in the middle of that. But and the result of the king,
Yeah.
the Holy Spirit given, God given
Yeah, grant him
Nehemiah's
favor.
favor
Yeah. That
right
dude
there
got a
immediately.
12 year off.
Paid.
I'm telling you, let's go.
Wow. It's incredible what God can do with prayer.
Oh man. If y'all haven't checked that out, read the story of Nehemiah again, to see God's faithfulness in that. But it's just a good reminder for us to be praying all the time. And that one, like I love what you said, the conflict has to be expressed.
Yes.
Right? It has to be expressed. One, we have to acknowledge it, that it's a conflict. And there's a whole bunch of stuff on that, like how we first acknowledge and go down that path, right? Begin to unpack the conflict that's in our heart, right? But it has to be expressed within yourself. It has to be expressed to God, right? Lord, this is troubling to me, and it has to be expressed even to the people that are around you, the people that you're interacting with, so that you can know what to deal with.
That's
how
really
we
good.
can deal with
I'm
it.
glad you said that, because that gives me this question that I have. Why is tone just as important as truth when it comes to conflict? You say we talk about like the conflict has to be expressed, and there's a lot that's going on,
Yeah.
because the conflict happens, so both people are kind of like festering, right? Because you in your head you're like, I need to say this, and I'm gonna say this. If he says this, and I'm gonna say this, right?
Yeah.
So you have this battle going on in your mind about how the argument, or how you want to say what you got to say, and being able to express your own emotions. But then in the heat of the battle, you have to be able to say your part in a way that your partner, your friend, whomever,
Yeah.
will be able to take it
Yeah.
in your truth of what you want to express without being so demeaning that the person didn't even respond,
Right.
can't even
Yeah.
hear what you have to say.
Yeah, that's good. And in our family, right, we say we have to have those tough conversations, but that's just the first part of it. We say tough conversations in love. And with tough conversations, I think one of the best ways to sort of express love is first beginning to like utilize one of the gifts that God has given us through our voice and through tone, right? And so that's one of the ways that you can actually transcribe, that you can show love in a situation, no matter how tough it is, in that tone that we've been given, in our communication that we've been given. But I think it shows care, right? When we actually take the time to reassess how this is going to come off, how people are going to think about it, or how they're going to feel. What will they feel when I say it in this way? What does that mean, right? And so how can we utilize that tool? Because it is a tool. And imagine, you think about all the times where people are saying something, and if the tone was just different, slightly different, the way that it would be received.
Absolutely. Well, we've had plenty of examples of this in our marriage.
Yeah.
Especially early on, like we said, this conflict resolution thing, it's not just a, one-time thing. It don't just automatically happen. You have to go through these phases and stages to where you understand, or where you have mentors or whomever where you can learn to be able to talk to people in a way that that they can hear it. I know there's been a situation, where I've gone to someone and I'm like, hey, you said this, and this really hurt me. So can you just explain to me why you said that, or what were you thinking when you made that comment? And before, in my younger days, in my younger days, when these things are starting to fester, you will barge in and you just be like, you this, you that,
Right.
you do, blah, blah, blah. And you start going off on the person. And then it becomes like, oh, well, I mean, that's not even what I meant,
Yeah.
then you probably get that response and you're like, oh, well, I probably should not have reacted that way, So being able to have the wisdom and the understanding to know that even if somebody else do something to you, that you don't have to come across with this like
Yeah.
forceful
Yeah.
ness to get the person to say what it is that's on their mind.
Yeah, I've never thought about it until now, but I definitely think tone is a way to absolutely express care, right? That you actually care about that person. And obviously, people can be sarcastic and they can try, but when there's genuine interest and love because there's someone that has taken the time to take a step back and say, okay, I'm going to communicate in this way with you because I mean, we've had, all kinds of different conversations where it's terrible news or it's hard to receive, but the way that it has been received, it makes you think about the situation or the conflict rather than the person, right?
Yeah.
You're not trying to now defend the person and the situation. You're just thinking about the conflict.
Yeah. I mean, tone can be so much when it comes to this. Like, to just piggyback off of what you're saying, the way that we talked about earlier, just raising our voice. If our voice is elevated too high in a situation, it can immediately trigger that person to raise their voice too, and then immediately there's no resolve that's even gonna occur.
So experiment with this in your next conflict. Test it out.
Test
and record some data. Yeah, like when the next person has a conflict with you, try raising your voice
and see what happens if the person match your level or if they bring it. Well, that happened to me the other day. I was I think I was at a shop or something, and I was talking to someone, and they were like, I don't know, it was like super excited, but it was like really, really high pitch.
Yeah.
But I consciously, it wasn't an argument or anything. It was just kind of like a regular conversation. But I just consciously, said to myself, I am not going to go at that level.
I'm too tired today.
Yes, I am too tired to even try to raise my excitement to your level. I'm going to talk in a steady pace. And I watched her come down to my level of the way that I was talking.
Okay, Jedi mind tricks over here.
I know. But I think that's how, that's a way that whenever it comes to like conflict resolution, is like, even if the person's, one person's voice is elevated, if you keep your tone at a, calm, probably not calm, if
steady. Let's go with steady.
Steady pace to where, and it's not elevated, but it's just, it's softer, eventually that person is going to stop talking, or they're going to bring their voice down to you, because if the emotion are rising on both sides, the conflict is, you're not going to go anywhere. But once one person starts realizing like, oh, I'm super mad, but he's not. So, he's like, why are you not mad? And you're just like, because there's nothing to be
I'm
mad.
upset. Listen. Listen, Linda.
That is not.
Don't be condescending.
Don't be condescending in that sense, and then that won't go anywhere also. So the thought that we want to leave with you is like, does your partner or friend or family member know how you in particular respond to conflict? Like, are you the silent person, or are you somebody that pray, or somebody that got to get things off their chest? And that's something that you got to resolve in a situation, to know like, okay, this person is going to need a couple of days, this person is going to need to get this off their chest. So let me just be ready to get, so being able to figure out what your partner is like when it comes to conflict.
Partner, coworker.
Friend.
We also, when you think about, just other relationships and work and partnerships and as well, And one of the things we like to do personalities tests and so forth. You kind of help to understand how this person reacts. But it's just good to know how people operate so that you can empathize with them.
Yeah, and it will make your relationship grow.
Yeah.
So whenever that person is, there's a conflict that happened and the person is kind of silent for a little bit, you don't feel like, okay, they don't care about me anymore.
Yeah.
They don't love me anymore. It's just like, okay, maybe they just need a couple days or
Right.
a couple hours to themselves just to kind of resolve it. And if this person is, okay, she needs to get this off her chest now.
Yeah.
So being able to like listen and understand, like, okay, this is just the way she is, she just needs to get
Yeah.
it off, and it's not anything against me, and I know that she needs to get it off her chest. Let me not react in this moment. So being able to decipher what emotional state, what resource does your partner lean towards, your friend, your mom, or whomever it is, they lean towards when it comes to like conflict. Knowing that can definitely help your relationship grow.
Cool. Yeah. Good to know.
Yeah.
Good to know.
So as you navigate this week, in your conflict, know that these resources are there. The silent treatment is it can be good and bad. Prayer can also be good. I don't want to say bad, but you can use it as a way to like
people can manipulate
prayer. Yeah. You in a conversation, you start spraying in the spirit. Shut that up, Boko. You're like, not now.
Yeah.
Not that, So people can manipulate the prayer to avoid a situation, or being able to express your emotions, but doing it in a way that is not right, using words to really harm. So yeah, as you go through this week, navigate, figure out what works best for you and what works best for your partner. So
yeah, cool. Well, thank you all for joining in and listening. As always, you can find us at relationshipsatreason.com or on our socials. Follow us, and we want to hear from you. Right now, I'm going to go and be silent.
This has been a Rogue Media Network production.